here I've got the crude product from the aspirin preparation. That was experiment A16, so we're on A17 now, and I'm just going to take off the top layer of filter paper like so, and I'm going to try to transfer this crude aspirin into a boiling tube here. So it just is a bit of an exercise in patience and care, especially since I've got quite a lot of the aspirin in here. So the first part of a recrystallization involves dissolving the solid in the minimum volume, importantly minimum volume, of the hot solvent. So the first job is to transfer the solid into a suitable container, so for instance this boiling tube, and then start the dissolving process. Now the crude aspirin has been transferred to this boiling tube, I'm just going to add a small quantity, about 3 centimetres cubed of ethanol to that. So that's cold ethanol going into that tube like so. And then I'm going to add that to a nice warm water bath. The second thing I'm going to do is put some more ethanol. So I've got about 25 centimetres cubed, which hopefully will be sufficient of ethanol again, and get that nice and warm so that I then will have some hot solvent to use in order to dissolve the aspirin. So I need to leave that now for a few minutes to warm up, and we'll come back when that's happened. So the ethanol has now warmed up nicely in this tube, so I'm just going to add it very carefully and very gradually to the crude aspirin in the other tube. I'm going to try and maintain the temperature as I'm doing this, because remember it's important to add the minimum volume of the hot solvent to dissolve this aspirin. And so I'm just going to take a stirring rod, a clean glass rod, and just carefully stir this, being really cautious not to break the boiling tube as I go. Adding just gradually some of that solvent, that ethanol solvent, to try to get this crude aspirin to dissolve. That's going to take a few goes, I think, so we'll come back in a few minutes. So it's looking as if that ethanol has just caused the aspirin to dissolve quite nicely. So the next thing we're going to do is take the aspirin and simply just pour it into a small cold beaker, just like that. So I've dissolved the aspirin in the minimum volume of the hot solvent, and then dropped it out of the water bath and just onto a cold surface, a nice cold beaker in this case. And you can perhaps see on the edge of this glass rod that there's crystals forming straight away, which is a good indication that that was a saturated solution. That as the temperature drops, the solubility of the solid will drop, and therefore the solid will start to crystallize out from the solution that we made. To help with that process, to improve both the yield and the rate at which that happens, I can stand that small beaker into an ice bath and just get it to cool even further, and we'll come back once it's had time to crystallize. The little beaker has now been sitting in ice for a period of time, and I took a glass rod and just scratched the surface of the beaker to help with the crystallization, and hopefully you can see that there's some nice crystals formed in the bottom of this beaker now. I've also moved the rest of the ethanol just onto ice to get some ice cold ethanol for the next stage. So again, filtering under reduced pressure, remember with a Buckner funnel and a Buckner flask or a side arm flask. I'm going to turn on the tap so that we get that vacuum going. This time I'm going to use some ethanol to wet the surface of this piece of filter paper. So some of that nice cold ethanol, I've just dropped that in like so, and just let that run through, so that gets us a nice good seal on that filter paper. And then I'm going to transfer this product using a spatula to help, because it's stuck quite nicely to the beaker actually, and just pour that into the funnel like so, and allow that to filter out nicely. Just scraping as much of this purified product into there as I can manage. Now you can perhaps see there's still quite a lot of this stuck to the side of this beaker. So if I take some of this ice cold ethanol, think about why it might need to be cold rather than warm ethanol, to just try to rinse that beaker off, and again use the spatula just to help with the transfer of that to minimise the amount lost, and just put that straight into there like so. I'm probably going to have to live with a little bit of that being lost on transfer. So the final step for this part of the method is to make sure that filtration gives us the purest possible product that we can have. And so again, because we separated the aspirin from the soluble impurities using the recrystallization method, I'd just like to take a quick, again, little pipette full of that ice cold ethanol and just give this a rinse. And then I'd like to take a nice clean cork and just press that down so that we've not got gaps that solvent can sneak through. And again, just give that a little rinse off and give that nice purified product a little rinse with the ice cold solvent. Now I'm going to rinse some air over that for a few moments just to dry it as best I can. Transfer that again onto a watch glass, allow it to dry before then weighing the mass of that product that we've made.